In a sterile white room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone, a man named Elias stared at a wall with eyes that hadn't blinked in 47 days. His skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over sharp cheekbones. He hadn't consumed a single calorie in over 6 weeks. Doctors monitored his vital signs around the clock, their instruments whispering with data that defied every medical textbook. The air in the room felt thick, charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Elias claimed he was nourished by it. Then, on day 48, the scratching began, not from the door or the walls, but from inside the observation glass itself. It was a dry, brittle sound that made the nurse's hands go clammy. Elias finally turned his head, and the monitors flatlined into a single, endless tone. But when they rushed in, the bed was empty. The only thing left was the smell of burnt sugar and a single, impossible sentence etched into the glass with a fingernail. This is Michael Anderson. For 60 relentless days, he attempted to prove it was possible. Doctors labeled it a suicide watch, a clinical term for his descent. But his followers whispered of something else: enlightenment, purchased at a terrible cost. This is what happened to his body and his mind. Michael wasn't always a headline. He was a software engineer from Portland. Smart, successful, but perpetually searching. What he found would fracture everything he knew. The weight of his existence pressed down upon him. The soul-crushing job, the relentless noise of modernity, the very act of consumption felt like an anchor. Then he found it. An ancient, fringe doctrine called Breatharianism. The belief that humans could transcend physical nourishment. Its promise: to subsist solely on prana, the life force carried in air and sunlight. But as he watched archival footage of Breatharian workshops, a quiet unease settled in his gut. The serenity on those faces felt too perfect, too still. To Michael, this wasn't pseudoscience. It was liberation. Freedom from grocery stores, from kitchens, from the entire system that binds us. He devoured accounts of mystical ascetics who claimed this impossible ability. Soon, Michael convinced himself, and his devoted online disciples, that he alone could prove this ancient truth under clinical observation. He secluded himself in a bare, remote cabin deep within New York's northern woods. He launched a crowdfunded site called the 60-Day Prana Project, its homepage stark and minimal on screen. He installed webcams, pledging an uninterrupted live stream for his viewers to witness everything. His rules were absolute and terrifying. No sustenance, no water, only breath for 60 days. On a crisp autumn morning, Michael took what he believed would be his last intentional bite of food, sustaining himself only on purified air, sunlight, and the occasional herbal tea, which he later claimed was just for ritual. Full of vigor and conviction, he began the experiment. But as the days stretched into weeks, the air in his isolated space grew heavy with the scent of ozone and stale tea. A primal dread took hold, his breath hitching at every faint scratching from the walls and the sticky, cold dampness that seeped into his bone. Paralyzed by the unknown, the ritual's purpose twisted into something far darker than he ever intended. Time-lapse footage from the webcams shows days ticking by on a graphic overlay. The first week became a spectacle of sheer willpower. He meditated for hours, performed light yoga, broadcasting daily about feeling lighter, more clear. He claimed his senses were heightening, but something in his voice carried the faint scent of ozone and a sticky, unnatural calm. His followers watched, captivated by his resolve. But medical experts monitoring the stream recognized a different reality. They saw the subtle, creeping signs of starvation that the audience missed. Day 7 arrived, and his body's energy reserves began to deplete. What looked like determination to his fans was, to trained eyes, the quiet onset of a dangerous decline. By day 10, his body shifted into ketosis, cannibalizing its own fat reserves. 4 days later, the physical transformation was undeniable. Any trace of a healthy glow had vanished, replaced by a clammy, corpse-like chill to the touch. His cheeks began to hollow, the bones beneath pressing against the thinning flesh like a grim anatomical etching. Michael's broadcasts grew briefer, his voice dropping to a hushed murmur. His focus shifted from celestial wonders to the unsettling presence of visitors. He began describing shimmering, indistinct figures that lingered just outside his direct sight. The air in his apartment grew thick with a static charge and the faint, metallic scent of ozone. He claimed they were energy beings, guides from a higher plane, here to assist his transition. To his followers, this was spiritual ascension. To psychologists watching, it was the first, terrifying signs of delirium, a mind unraveling from severe dehydration and nutrient deficiency. Concerned forum posts began to multiply. News headlines slowly picked up the story. Breatharian starving himself on livestream. Day 30. At the halfway point, Michael had become a ghost of his former self. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if pushing through thickening air. The webcam feed, once crisp, now showed a man dissolving in the dim room's gloom. The scent of ozone and damp plaster hung in the still air around him. He abandoned his yoga mat entirely, his movements now reduced to a near-constant stillness. He would sit for hours, his gaze fixed on nothing, as if listening to a whisper just beyond hearing. Then, he turned to the camera, his voice a dry rasp, and utter the same chilling refrain. The body is a lie. The hunger is a memory. I just have to remember how to forget. His online community splintered. Half pleaded with him to stop, their messages tinged with the metallic scent of desperation. The other half, deeper down the rabbit hole, hissed accusations of negative energy and sabotage against the doubters. Michael clung only to the latter, ignoring all else. The experiment had transcended testing. It became rigid dogma. He was its starving prophet, consumed by devotion. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and stale sweat. Every surface felt cold and slick to the touch. A low, persistent hum vibrated through the floor. In that sterile void, his devotion festered into obsession. The dogma demanded everything, and he gave it willingly. Day 55, the crisis. Michael hadn't moved from his meditation cushion for nearly 12 hours. The air in the room grew thick, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone and the underlying must of damp earth. On the feed, his chest rose and fell in shallow, almost imperceptible breaths, the only sign he hadn't succumbed to the stillness that now gripped the space. Then, a low, guttural whisper, not from Michael's lips, began to scratch at the edge of the audio feed, warping the silence into something palpable and wrong. His breathing was shallow, a raspy whisper that cut through the stream's audio like a blade. He spoke not to his audience, but argued with the empty, suffocating air around him. The faint scent of ozone and damp earth clung to the space, a tangible presence he couldn't shake. Michael, no, you said you'd show me. You promised it would be painless. Where is the promised light? There is only an endless, suffocating dark. The cold isn't just on my skin, it's a deep, marrow-deep chill, and a smell of damp earth, and something metallic, like old iron, fills the void. For the first time, raw, animal fear broke through the spiritual trance. He tried to stand, but his limbs, little more than skin and bone, buckled beneath him. He collapsed onto the floor, the damp chill of the stones seeping through his clothes. In full view of the camera, the chat exploded. The spiritual pilgrimage had now become a dire medical crisis, unfolding live before our eyes. The metallic scent of panic filled the air as a viewer in Ohio, his fingers trembling, pinpointed the cabin's remote coordinates. With a voice thick with dread, he placed the call that would shatter the quiet of the local sheriff's office. The line connected, and a new, chilling chapter in this nightmare began its broadcast. The final image, broadcast to thousands, before the feed went dead, was a blur of paramedic jackets and Michael's limp, emaciated body being lifted onto a stretcher. He weighed 87 pounds. He was dying. The conclusion arrives as the music fades to a single, repeating, mournful piano note. Michael survived, but the hospital's refeeding therapy only saved his body. His mind was lost in the process, a permanent casualty. The damage to his kidneys and heart was etched into his very physiology, a cruel tax for survival. He was left hollow, a vessel containing only the echo of what he once was. His mind had unraveled, memory and reason fraying like worn rope. In one sober interview after release, they asked if he still believed. The camera holds on him, a man hollowed out by what he witnessed. A whisper escapes him, carrying the scent of ozone and old dust. Michael, I believed it so completely that I forgot how to be human. The hunger wasn't a memory. It was a primal truth, and the figures I glimpsed weren't guides. They were just the dark, waiting. A damp, metallic scent hung in the air, the smell of old soil and something coppery. The channel that broadcast his descent was wiped from existence. The Breatharian community dismissed him as impure, their whispers carrying the scent of ozone and sanctimony. He retreated to his elderly parents' Ohio home, a ghost haunting his own life, the air thick with the scent of decay and regret. So, did Michael Anderson survive on air alone? No. He endured not because of some spiritual test, but in brutal defiance of it. His experiment wasn't a journey of the spirit. It was a merciless cartography of the body's breaking point. He wasn't transcending hunger. He was being methodically erased by it, cell by cell. Each day, a little more of him vanished into the cold, hollow ache that consumed everything. He sought to transcend humanity, but instead revealed its terrifying essence. His final act left us with a chilling paradox that echoes in the silence. What is more dangerous, the idea that kills the body, or the belief that kills the mind? His legacy is a question that lingers in the heavy air long after the screen fades to black.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.